From Bones being the most dominant fighter the UFC has ever seen, to Derek Brunson backing the GOAT for the win, here's how Jon Jones would destroy Sergei Pavlovich. I gotta start with the fact that Jones is the GOAT, and I'm not downplaying how good Pavlovich is. Since losing to Alistair Overeem in his first UFC fight, the Russian's been unstoppable. Fun fact, did you know that Sergei spent a total of less than 10 minutes over his current 5-fight win streak? Yeah, he's got a classic game plan of hitting everything and everyone really damn hard. And so far, it seems to be working. But for his next potential opponent, we're talking about Jon Jones. Not some journeymen like Derek Lewis tied to Ivasa or Curtis Blades. Jones is different territory altogether. You can't just go with a Hulk-like game plan against someone who's considered the greatest ever. It's bound to end terribly if Pavlovich ever does find himself in the ring with Jones, because to put it lightly, there's no match there. Yes, he's earned the right to call out Jones for a fight, and he's the #1 contender for the title in the heavyweight division. But that doesn't mean he's good enough to get something from that fight. No freaking way. It could have been an interesting point of discussion if this was Jones' first fight since 2020. But the way he returned to action earlier in March 2023 and destroyed Cyril Gane, I don't think he's left any doubt about how good he is, and how nearly every other fighter ends up being a mismatch against him. That said, I do think Pavlovich will fancy his chances though. Look, as much as the odds are in favor of Bones getting another big win, you can't quite rule out big hitters completely. The Russian is extremely powerful, and if we were to compare the two fighters purely on the basis of their physiques and hitting power, you'd back Pavlovich to get a win by KO for sure. As Reddit user Reborn Goat puts it, Pavlovich has the potential to KO any human that has ever walked if they land flush. But he also predicted the entire fight with the next line, saying, "Doesn't mean they should beat everyone." This is exactly how most analysts expect the fight to play out, should it ever happen, that is. Fighters like Pavlovich, Francis Ngannou, and many others always have at least some chance of winning every fight they've been a part of. Why? Because of their deadly ability to end fights within a split second due to the sheer force they possess. And in Sergei's case, he's also proven his ability and landed those million-dollar fight-ending punches, particularly over his last 5 fights. It's bound to fill him up with confidence in his ability to knock anyone out, but it could also be the undoing of the 30-year-old. You've heard the famous saying to not change a winning formula, right? Well, it's not a great idea to get into a fight against Jones. If your winning formula is to land one big punch, unfortunately for Pavlo, his faith in that haymaker has only been repaid in the last 5 outings, and he'll back himself to land it on Jones too. That's a bad idea. Bones is way too good to fall into that trap. He's a calculated athlete, and a plan like this is too predictable for a fighter like Jones to overlook, because for many, Jones is the most intelligent fighter in MMA history. Yeah, he's got plenty of other advantages too, but what's the point of having all that at your disposal if you don't really know how to capitalize on those tools? Jones doesn't struggle to do that. He's got an insane fighting IQ. He's a master in analyzing upcoming fights. The 35-year-old spends a lot of time analyzing the fight footage of his rivals, and with a genius coaching team at his disposal, Jon likes to break down the fighting style of his opponent to the smallest details. Most importantly though, unlike other heavyweight fighters, Jones doesn't like to push his body and mind over the limits. Instead, he likes to train smartly. This smart training involves many things like meditation to stay focused, condition and strength training every other day, and a lot more. But the biggest edge he holds over just about any other fighter is in his fight IQ. Most of the fighters like to follow the plans they come up with pre-fight. Jones, though, is very versatile. He starts slow, taking his time to read his rival first, and then he adapts to the way his opponent is fighting inside the ring. This willingness to change himself and the adaptability at his disposal makes him very dangerous. Look at his fight against Alexander Gustafsson. Jones was deep in trouble to say the least. How did he react? By regrouping and adapting to the new challenge, and fighting his way to victory like a true superstar. This is why I feel Pavlovich will come up short, no matter what he does, because big hitters have a low ceiling. There's little doubt that Pavlo's right is the nastiest weapon in the heavyweight division, and he's also not a senseless hitter like many others with a similar profile. In fact, Sergei likes to take his time, but as many fighters have noticed, and failed to take advantage of I must add, is how the Russian is vulnerable to low kicks. That's something which will come in handy for Jones, given his reach. He'll have ample shots to take at Pavlovich's legs, and he's not static in the ring, unlike some of the recent fighters that Pavlovich came up against. Now, I did talk about how Sergei is heavily reliant on his right hook, but he needs to get close enough to land it. In fact, He tends to keep his distance until he can get close enough to land one, before going on an all-out barrage. Again, this isn't going to be a great matchup for him against Jones. The GOAT relies a lot on his reach, given his height advantage, and he'll have that at his disposal once again if he enters the ring against the Russian. Plus, Pavlovich has got a really low ceiling because of how one-dimensional he actually is. Take a look at his last 5 fights. I don't remember any kick being thrown, but maybe he threw a couple at max. I doubt it, but if that's the case, then it'll show up immediately in Jones's prep if he takes the fight, and he'll be licking his lips. But before we get any further, the biggest question is, will the Jones-Pavlovich fight ever happen? As much as the fans want to see it, the chance of the fight actually materializing is pretty low, mostly because at 35, Jones isn't caught up in making a name for himself in the heavyweight division. He's already done that. Instead, he's got bigger aims, which include booking a fight against Stipe Miocic and getting a win over the Silencer to confirm his status as the GOAT. It'd serve as the perfect title defense for the 35-year-old before he can call it a day. For what it's worth, Dana White has confirmed that there's a plan for the blockbuster fight between Stipe and Jon, and Madison Square Garden has been rumored to house the fight sometime later this year. As far as the Russian heavyweight is concerned, he's more than happy to wait until after the Miocic-Jones fight to then take on the winner. And Anthony Smith, the light heavyweight fighter in the UFC, believes Jones won't take that fight, not because he's scared or something, but because Lionheart thinks that his fellow countrymen wouldn't have any reason left to fight if he gets a win over Stipe Miocic. That seems to be what the fans think as well, and Jones has also hinted at a possible retirement after his blockbuster fight against Stone Cold. It's a shame, because it would have been nice to see Bones shutting another challenger up and derailing yet another hype train. But until he officially hangs up his gloves, the rumors will keep on coming. And Sergei will keep on stoking the fire in the hope that he convinces the GOAT to enter the octagon, mostly because he really wants the belt. To be fair, there's not a lot more Sergei could have done in the last few fights to make a case for the belt. The way he dismantled Blades was probably enough to get White's attention. But he's on a 5-fight knockout win streak. What more does he need to do? In his post-fight conference, he praised Jones and Miocic both, saying that they're both hard warriors, and how he'd have to prepare for whoever wins the fight, but he'll be ready no matter who the opponent is. Cody Durden of the flyweight division agrees that Pavlov's earned his right to the belt, while Matt Brown, the welterweight, went a step further and claimed that Sergei beats Jon Jones. But Derek Brunson doesn't agree with those takes. UFC's middleweight star Brunson claimed that Pavlovich-Jones fight would be a good one and could be interesting on the feet, but he believes that on the ground, Jones is just different and would take the win. That's a very good call by Brunson because of Sergei's limitations as a grappler, and one that fans majorly agreed with too. Whether it actually ends up being true is a different story altogether. So from Brunson backing Bones to win, to his dominance knowing no bounds, this is how Jon Jones would destroy Sergei Pavlovich.